I mean, I look at art as creation. I mean, where did we come from? How did we get here? I mean,
Good morning, everyone. We are doing another episode of Ezekiel's Art Podcast, episode 19 with Katrina Brennan. Now, before I start, I'm going to talk about our sponsors, which is me. So go check out my website, ezekielschmittart.com, so that way, if you want to support the podcast, you can from there. I've got lots of products. Eventually, I'm going to put on a donation thing, but I'm doing this for free as a thank you to artists for just being awesome. So, Miss Katrina, why don't you introduce yourself?
well, I'm not sure what you want to know, but I graduated from Eastern Washington University in about 1999. I don't remember anymore. With a major in education, minor in art. Probably around college is when, maybe a little bit later, is when I kind of started to regularly paint. You know, like most artists, you know, I drew a lot when I was a kid, but really didn't start getting serious about it and becoming regular at it until I was in my mid-20s. And then I've been showing my work in Spokane and some surrounding areas since probably 15 years ago now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've noticed that you have a very striking style. I've seen some of your paintings in real life, and they just blow my mind. And so I was wondering, where did this style develop from?
Well, I've gone through a lot of phases. It's just been constant curiosity. So when I started really learning how to paint, it started off with me doing acrylics, and then I switched to oils because I wanted to get better. And I would study artists like Lassen, you know, the above below underwater guys. There's Wyland. You see them a lot in Hawaii. You see like the whales and the dolphins swimming underneath, and then you see the land above. I started studying them and seeing why their painting style was so effective. And then I wanted to do my own thing, so I did more of a Northwest kind of feel with eagles and salmon and seals and things like that. Although my husband never liked the ones with the salmon and the seals, because seals eat your salmon as you're reeling them in. So he's like, well, no one's going to want to buy that, because no fisherman's going to want to buy that, because they all hate the seals. You know, you're reeling your fish and you're halfway eaten. But, you know, I learned a lot by doing that. So after that, I continued to work in oils for a while. But every time I go to an art gallery, I realized I was more drawn toward the more loose, colorful style. So then I became really curious, got back into acrylics, started doing more of a loose style. And I don't even know how to explain what it was. But I started to do kind of that fish shape that you see in the skies that I've been doing lately. A lot of those shapes. And then got into ceramics, started hand building sculptures, then went back to painting again. And that's where I kind of slowly graduated to what I'm doing now. It's just constant playing around, constant curiosity, experimenting. Right now I'm doing a little bit of the realism and the looser style kind of combined. So I'm seeing that morphing over time.
So as someone that's I am an acrylic artist, but I'm extremely curious about oils, because like I just see beautiful blending on it, but I'm a little scared to kind of jump into the waters of it, so to speak. What are your pros and cons for oils?
Well, I think drying time is kind of a big element. I actually really like working with oils. You have to have a softer touch. Like, you touch something too hard with that brush and it's just gonna blend away. You have to be really light with it, and really you could be heavy with some aspects of it. Yeah, it's another learning curve when I switched from oils back to acrylic, that was another learning curve because I wanted to dry immediately, and that could be good. You can sell something right away when you create an acrylic, and I suppose you can. My mom's carried an oil painting home wet from a place that she bought one, but if you want to varnish it or if you want to, sell it to somebody right away, it's, they might end up dinging it and messing it up on the way home. But yeah. But I've even thought about going back to acrylics. I'm always moving. I'm always, I thought about doing the style that I do now in oils again because I'm better with realism in oils. So yeah, always trying to grow, always trying to experiment.
I've noticed that a lot of realism is done in oil. Is there any reason that you can think of for that?
Yeah, it has a vibrance. You can paint the light so I think more effectively when you do oils. I mean, some acrylic artists that are really, really good at it will say if you get your values down properly and then varnish it, excuse me, you can get some of those same effects. But I've noticed with oil, there's just something buttery and soft about them that is, to me, kind of, you can't replicate that in acrylic. Really, I personally don't think so, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, and then even after varnishing it, it still doesn't look the same. Because I did that with a few of mine, and the color pops a lot better, and the blacks look deeper.
Yeah.
But then it screws up with having to try to print, which I didn't know until I took one of the paintings I recently finished that I varnished, took it over there, and he's like, oh, well, this shine, since this is mostly black, that's probably going to show up. And I was like, no. Yeah. He's like, we can fix this in post, but just to let you know for the future.
Yeah.
And that's just something that really makes me want to push towards oil. So like even if it takes forever to dry, at least the color looks the same.
Yeah. Acrylics can dry flat, and then when the varnish, I've learned over the years, I don't varnish anything until it's scanned. And a recent place that I used for my most recent painting, the Fly Fisherman, he scanned it, and then I went home, varnished it, brought it back, and then he color matched based on the varnish, based on the varnish look, because the varnish brings out the colors more.
Okay.
And then that way he doesn't have to go back in there and take out all those little white dots that happen because of the glare. One less step for the scanner and the printer to do. It takes less time for them.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to start doing that. So when you paint water, because I love to study the way other painters work, and I really love the way you do water. What do you keep in mind when you do water?
Well, it's a layering process, and that's another thing when coming back to the oils. I am way better at water and oils, way better, because there's a softness to water, and you almost have to with acrylics. I'm learning now to use an extender. I have a bottle, it's called a retarder. It just slows down the drying process. You can get some blending in there. I just work from the darkest colors to the lightest colors. It's a layering process because water is deep. There's layers to it, and then there's reflection, and it depends upon the sky color. And it can also depend if it's a rushing river with a lot of ripples and movement, you're going to have different colors that occur because of that as well. And water is, there's hardly ever the color white when it comes to water. It's more like reflection. It's like a mirror. But with lakes, a placid lake, it's I think it's easier than rivers. Considering the sky color, a lot of people want to just go right to the color blue when the sky is actually pink,
That's something that's been on my mind a lot lately, because I used to love to just sit by the Spokane River at Marabou Park and just kind of watch the water. But it didn't hit me until relatively recently that I'm like, that's not blue at all. That's like a weird desaturated gray, greenish blue.
Yeah.
And then you got the weird clouds coming over, and it's just fascinating to me how, for at least looking back at old art, the way people used to paint water, and then when realism came in, that huge difference of people being able to perceive what things actually are like. It just blows my mind.
Yeah.
How we think things like, we think the ocean's blue. It's not.
No.
It's got that weird kind of gray. It's blue in some areas, but like if I go down to Oregon, it's going to be that weird kind of gray because like the clouds are everywhere.
Yep. And then the water's pushing some sand in toward the shore, so you can get some brown in there. It just really depends on the day and the type, how the water's flowing and what's in there. And if when you're painting rivers, considering as you get toward the shore, you're going to see like the bottom of the river. I'm almost to the point where I want to paint the entire bottom of the river and then start, adding the water on top so I can get that gradual, shore to depth feeling, I'm learning.
So I wanted to ask you, keep going.
Oh, I'm done. I was done with
I just wanted to ask you, like, so what is your process? Like when you have a blank canvas, what do you do after that?
Well, first of all, I try to do a thumbnail sketch to kind of get an idea of what I want. I'm getting to the point now where I think I need to do a small color study before I continue, because I spend a lot of time trying to figure out. Sometimes I get stuck on a painting and I don't know where to go next. So I do at least do a thumbnail sketch to kind of get an idea of where I want to go. I'm thinking I want to do small color studies, and so I'm not stuck and I can finish faster. But I do, as far as the process of getting the first brush stroke on there, I tone my canvas. I have started gessoing my canvas. I listened to a podcast. I think it's Stephen Bauman on Spotify, and he is a really great oil painter, and he's also a painting professor, and now he does mentorship for people. And he talked about the texture of the canvas being kind of noisy, and he equated it to the old record players where you'd like hear the static and then the music through the static. And he thinks, his opinion is that the texture of the canvas is like noise. So I'm like, maybe I should try to start gessoing 3 or 4 layers first and sanding it in between and just seeing how that goes. So I tone it, but I've started gessoing first, in some cases anyway. And and then I kind of start with the sky. I'm not great at blocking everything in first. I see a lot of artists do that. They block in the whole thing first. I'm not great at that. I might try it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of a overlapping and layering process for me. Kind of sky and then back to front, working back to front. So
thematically, I've noticed you have certain elements in your stuff, especially the fish seem to be a really big one. Mm-hmm. Is there any other themes that you really enjoy working with?
Well, let's see. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of fish. Themes as far as fertility. I like fertility. Eggs. I've had a lot of eggs show up in my paintings the last year or so. Birds. I've got kind of I just finished one with a tree spirit, kind of a woman's, like her neck is the trunk and then she has her face, and the recent one with all the birds in her branches, and then there's a golden egg on top in a nest, like she sprouted the egg and all these birds are there to see what is going to happen next because it's cracking. I like fertility. It's a good, I don't know. I think about it a lot.
It's a really innate human theme, yeah. I think. Because you look back through all these cultures and the fertility cults and everything go way back even into prehistory. Yeah. So as I noticed you started talking a little bit about kind of the tree spirits and everything on when you're painting. And I've noticed that your art has a very spiritual aspect. That might be just me projecting onto it. No. Okay, so can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, I have, so it stems from even as a kid having like really vivid dreams, like lucid dreams, leaving my body, um, meeting different beings in my dreams, flying, all the colors and everything. And so I've always thought a lot about life and death. I think, and I'm always thinking about that. I was exposed to Christianity as a kid. I'm not a churchgoer, but I've just been thinking for years about, I don't know, life on other planets and different life forms out there in the universe. And so I just naturally bring that into existence in my paintings. I don't like painting normal stuff, and I want to take things a little bit further than just normal, like a what if kind of question. And I do like in my landscapes to bring in something that's more kind of an otherworldly feel. So in my last painting with the fly fisherman, that was kind of a tribute to my dad who loved fly fishing, and he died like 4 years ago. And so I wanted him fishing in heaven. And the person that bought that painting, she just lost her brother last year. And so she immediately looked at that and said, I picture my brother fishing in heaven. So she understood. Awesome. There's a podcast, I'm trying to remember which one it is, because I listen to these art podcasts, and I think it's the Art Marketing Minute. I think it's him, where he wants to know what the artist is thinking. Like, you should always be asking yourself, what am I thinking? So then when somebody asks you, what were you thinking when you painted that? You can explain that, and you should also be able to convey that. I know some artists say, well, I'll just let the person decide what they want to see in the painting. Well, that's cool too. That's cool too. But I was just really happy that she was able to see what I was thinking and come to the same conclusion. Yeah.
It's nice because, like, as I emphasize a lot, art is a form of communication. Yeah. And so, like, I do understand the, interpret it for yourself type thing. That's really cool. But for me, art is really beautiful when it's like that, when the artist can create something that comes from a deep emotional state, and someone else totally understands exactly what they're going just by looking at the picture. And I think that's something that's beautiful. And so you talked about lucid dreams, and I'm really big into dreams, lucid dreams. I have a dream journal. I study that
Me too.
a lot.
I've got like 3 notebooks full from like 15 years ago.
I only got one so far. I've kind of fallen off of it in the past couple of months, but I need to get back to it. Yeah. So when did you realize that you were lucid dreaming as a kid?
I didn't really know. I didn't know what lucid dreams were. I mean, and in fact, they became more intense, and I was able to analyze them more probably in my 20s. That's when I kind of realized that it was beyond like your garbled, warped kind of dream. These were like really vivid, and there's a theme. I mean, some of my dreams are literally like movies. They're like movies, And I think the one that I realized whoa, that was just crazy is, I dreamt that I was somebody else. I was like this dark-skinned woman with long black hair, and I was part of this ceremony. It was an indoor ceremony with like these 2 shaman, like old women, and I was getting married to this man with dark skin, dark hair, and they took our hands and they wound them with like some kind of rope or twine, and then they opened up all of a sudden, like this portal opened up in the wall, and we were sent through that portal. And I remember the colors. I remember like spinning through that, the way it felt. And I arrived, it was funny, I arrived on a ship in the middle of the ocean. And
that's cool.
And that is just the beginning. I mean, some of them are literally like Star Wars. So, if I was a better writer, I'd write a book or 2.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I would buy it. I'd read it.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting that you said some of your dreams are like movies, because when I was a kid, that's how I described it. I thought I made my own movies in my head when I was sleeping.
Yeah.
And so that's how I would explain until I found out, like, later on what lucid dreaming was.
Yeah.
But I know you also talked about having OBEs, or out of body experiences. I've experienced those too, but usually not when I'm intentionally doing it, or trying to do it. When you had those, was it an intentional, like you're trying to do something, or did it just happen naturally?
I've had some, like the first time it happened, it was unintentional. It was pretty freaky, really freaky. And that was, I don't know how many years ago that was, 20 years ago, where I just kind of almost like somersaulted out of my body, and I looked at the ceiling, and I was about to go through because I was super excited. Hey, look, it just happened. And then I heard this voice say, no, don't. And that was when I just kind of slammed back in. And then I had other, like, I wasn't thinking about it, quote unquote, where I did go through the ceiling, and then I'm like going up, and I see the earth kind of just shrink, and I'm up in space. And then I slowly come back down, and I see my house, and I'm back in my body. I've had once where one time, and you know, I say OBE. Who knows what it really is?
Yeah.
But, I mean, these are super vivid. Where I couldn't get through the ceiling, I'm reaching up, and this person grabbed me, pulled me up, and then I'm looking at this kind of odd-looking guy with wide set eyes and real pale skin. And there's a room full of children sitting in like these machine type things, and they're being programmed. These children are being programmed, and there's like a robot sitting at the side of the door. I mean, it was crazy. You know, when I came back into my body, I'm thinking, well, what was that? Was that like another dimension? You know, and you know, people ask me when I tell them this, which I don't tell a ton of people, just people that are super close to me that want to know. I don't do any substances. This is just, you know, how I've always been. You know,
I think it's extremely interesting that our brains, we naturally have this capability to be creative.
Yeah.
And whether it's truly out of body experience or just an intense form of remembering a dream.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm on the fence, because I've had the experience, and so to me, I'm like, nah, man, this is a real thing. But then, like, I read research, stuff like that, and I'm like, maybe, I don't know. But I think it's interesting that we have the creative faculty to be able to come up with these other worlds, whether it is reality or not, where it's still being projected into our brain into a certain way. And so, do you see a connection between your dreaming life and your art?
Yeah, I do. I mean, just that I'm taking the desire from my dreams sometimes, from that dream world, and I'm trying to put an element of that into my paintings. You know, maybe to get people to think about, you know, a dimension, a place beyond where we're at right now, which isn't always a fun place, you know?
Very true. And so, forgot my question. I had it about 3 seconds ago, and it just skid right by my mind. What artists do you derive inspiration from?
Over the years, I like Chagall. He has a dreamlike quality to his work. I've actually drawn inspiration from Leonardo da Vinci, because when I was in college, you know, getting a little bit off topic, not really, but kind of, I had this tenured professor that taught drawing and advanced drawing and watercolor and advanced watercolor, and he literally never taught anything. He came in, told us to draw a circus scene, left the room, and there were a lot of angry students, and the guy couldn't be fired. So I actually learned a ton from my art history classes. So Leonardo da Vinci used a lot of directing the viewer's eyes, and he would like use use a figure to point toward another figure who was looking somewhere else. And so he used a lot of triangular methods, because Leonardo da Vinci was a scientist as well. And he used color, like you'd see like 3 aspects of red, or, you know, three, yeah, he used color kind of in a triangular fashion to create balance and, you know, direct the viewer's sight, and also gestures and people. So I'm trying to think, there have been quite a few. My most recent one that I just learned about after this particular style, I just learned about him about 6 months ago. Haskell, William Haskell. He's a, and I think he's dead, but uses really vibrant colors, more of like a Western theme, but his skies kind of have that overlapping color that I like to use. I think better than mine, more depth. I mean, he was a really well-known artist, but I loved finding him, because I'm like, oh, look, there's somebody else that kind of did what I'm doing, and I can learn from this person in my own way.
Mm-hmm. So do you ever find yourself, when you're looking at a painting, instead of like seeing it for what it is, analyzing it from an artistic perspective?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
What do you usually like to focus on when you do that?
I like to look at the way they use color and their values. I like the use of values and balance and composition. Mm-hmm. And I ask myself why I like it. Like, what is it about that painting that I like so much? Is it a feeling? And why do I feel that? You know, is it the color? Is it the depth? Is it maybe, if it's a subject, like an animal or a human, the eyes? The eyes are really, really important. So yeah, the communication, if I paint eyes, I like to create a communication between the viewer and whatever that is. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what I do.
So moving on to one of my favorite questions that I like to annoy artists with, that I know some people hate this question, some people love it, but to you, how do you define art? Or in another way to phrase it, what is art to you?
Art, well, art to me is just taking, it's taking creation. I mean, I look at art as creation. I mean, where did we come from? How did we get here? I mean, everything that we look at was, I mean, I personally think it's like creation. It stemmed from somewhere, you know. Mm-hmm. And art it makes you feel. It makes you feel like, wow, human. It makes you feel human. You know, you look at it and there's connection, and there's connecting with other people. A way to bring people together and make you look inside yourself. I think that's the best way I can say it.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that a lot in your art, there's a very much a introspective essence to it. Yeah. Like you really have to like look at the painting and then think for a while. Mm-hmm. Do you do that intentionally, or is that just part of the way you just do art?
Yeah, it's intentional. It's intentional for me. You know, I have to ask myself as I am painting why I'm doing something. And if I don't connect with it, I don't feel like other people can either. I mean, there's definitely something great about just going up to a canvas and throwing whatever you feel onto it. That's okay, you know? Every artist has their way of doing things, but I do, and I'm an overthinker. And I think that's why it takes me a long time to finish something, is I am taking every single aspect of it. I'm trying to look at it scientifically without it being, without it being sterile, you know, because you can definitely, there are some painters that are pretty, they're intellectual, and you can almost feel it. Like there's not a connection. I don't feel a connection. Maybe somebody else does.
Yeah, so like a more analytical type of feel.
Uh-huh.
It kind of, the way you're describing that kind of reminds me of like Mondrian's art, that very a weird form of abstract that seems very mathematical
Uh-huh.
and almost cold. It's very pretty, and I really enjoy the style,
Mhm.
but it's hard for me to connect with squares of
Yeah.
color.
Yeah. Yeah,
And so
sure.
I I heard you earlier talk about how you one of your themes that you like to go through is, and you think about a lot, is life and death.
Yeah.
How do you work that into your paintings?
So, for example, there is this one painting that I did that sold, and it was another tree spirit. It had a little bit more of an androgynous look to it, with a lotus flower on the head, two luna moths,
Hmm.
green luna moths, and you could see like it's kind of an above below feeling, and the face was more Zen, had kind of a
Hmm.
Buddhist look to it with the longer earlobes. Um, and below, I painted all of the roots. And among all of the roots were the skeletal remains of animals and humans. And it was called From Birth to Awakening, which I got that. I reached out to people to give me ideas for the title. And this one woman who is a really spiritual woman, she does astrology. She just came up with the best name, From Birth to Awakening. And I just thought that was, or From Death to Awakening. That's what it was, From Death to Awakening. And it just made me think about life springing from death, because it's all cyclical.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, how plants and animals, like an animal dies and other creatures feed off of its body. The body goes into the soil and things grow from that. And it's really nutrient rich, and how a lot of
Hmm.
beautiful things can crop up from that.
I love that. It's like the cycle of
Yeah,
incarnation. I have kind of my own perspective of it because, like, I've read some Hindu texts and some Buddhist
yeah,
texts, and I have kind of more of a almost scientific view of it. It's
yeah,
like it doesn't necessarily have to be a spiritual thing, but you can just go out and see, like you're talking about, animals that we dissolve, we become nutrients,
yeah,
then we become incorporated with plants, and then the plant gets eaten by the animal,
yeah,
and so that part of us gets carried all the way through to another
yeah,
human that eats that animal or eats that
yeah,
plant.
yeah.
And
And I,
so I really enjoy those aspects of your art. Also, I've noticed kind of an alchemical theme to it. Is that intentional, or
no,
was that just kind of come out of it?
I don't think I've thought about that before. You know, describe to me what you mean by that.
Okay, so on it was the first painting I saw of yours, and it was at Mad. It was I believe you dropped it off just for like a day or so. But it was the one of, I think it's like an almost alien gray looking face
Yeah, yeah,
blowing the wind, and then you have the sky, you have like a drier area, I believe, and then you had like it. So to me, it spoke very much to kind of like a balancing of the elements type
oh,
aspect. I didn't know if that was intentional or not.
that sprang from it was like an intuitive drawing where I just draw without thinking, and it had the elements of life and death and the journey in between, because there was a tall ship and that on sailing on the seas. There was the bones of a deer. There was a nest and eggs and a raven, and then the sun. You could interpret it as the sun or the moon, but and then what else was that? There were some butterflies. It's yeah, transformation. Life, death, transformation, and the journey. Yeah. So I never thought about it as alchemical before, but definitely um, defining it. Yeah.
It's probably because I just read so many weird books. I'm like,
Me
I
too.
see patterns
I
everywhere
do
that
too.
aren't
I
there.
do too. And on the subject of reincarnation, I've had so many dreams where I'm somebody else, like from another time. It's so weird, even in the future. Like, whoa, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Those are the weirdest ones for me because they seem very disjointed from like the day-to-day aspects.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed that, like, things that happen throughout your day or throughout your week will come out in your dreams, but then there's some of these dreams that are nothing related to your life at all.
Yep. I've had those, definitely.
So I want to kind of switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
When we talked about kind of weird books, what are some of your favorite weird books to get into? Because I love pretty much learning anything.
Weird books?
Or any books in general.
Gosh, I've read so many weird stuff, and I'm trying to think of what's down in my collection. I mean, I have some that really aren't weird. You know, I've got I don't even know how to pronounce his name. He's a Vietnamese Buddhist.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can see his name in my head, but I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah. Thich Nhat Hanh. I'm probably saying it totally. Thich, I think. Let's see. I know I'll think about it later. Oh, I do have one about children in their past lives. I have some exopolitical type books that I read that I probably shouldn't even mention because I know we're in too much of a very tense time right now, so I won't bring them up. But who else do I like? Oh gosh, I wish I could remember. I'll probably remember as we're talking, and then I'll interrupt and tell you what they are.
Do it. I love that. So, have you ever looked into like hypnotherapy or hypnosis or anything like that?
Yes, I have. I've thought about it. Although I went to a hypnotist once for fear of flying, and I couldn't be hypnotized. And all I did was kind of relax a little. I mean, I really am left going, okay, that didn't work at all. I've been in the audience of a hypnotist who got people to do all kinds of things, and it didn't work. It didn't work on me. So I don't know, maybe the right person. There's a lady called Mary, oh gosh, what's her name? I think her last name's Rodwell. She does some, I don't know if it's past life. I think she might do some past life stuff. Yeah.
I only ask it since you talked about that. Oh,
here's a book.
Go for it.
It's fiction, but it's called The Immortalists. And the Immortalists is about some siblings, like 4 siblings, who all go to see this this future telling gypsy woman, and she tells them all the day that they're going to die. And you're left asking, was it a self-fulfilling prophecy because they knew, because they thought that, did they encourage their own death on that particular day because they were told that? Or was it really the truth? Was it really them getting told the future?
Mm-hmm.
That was a really interesting one. And then The Midnight Library, that is also fiction, because I can't remember my nonfiction right now. Midnight Library, about this woman who she tries to commit suicide, and she finds herself in this library, and she looks at all of the versions of the lives she could have led, and it gets you thinking about, should I be like regretting not going this direction or that direction, or should I just be happy where I am and just try to make the best of that?
Mm-hmm.
So I like
that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to read that. I think I've heard that title before,
mm-hmm.
but it might have just been in passing and it just didn't register in my head. But that sounds like a really cool book. I'm gonna have to check that out. And so, I noticed when you were talking about how the fortune teller influenced the lives, was it their own self-fulfilling prophecy? I have kind of a similar thought about that with tarot cards, because I do readings ever so often. And when I do it and they seem to be correct, I'm like, is this because I saw this chain of events, it was a possibility? Mm-hmm. Did I self-fulfill this, or was it actually just kind of my unconscious telling me what I was already going to do?
Yeah.
Or is it some spirits or whatever?
Yeah, that's why I'm really curious about that kind of thing, but because I am an overthinker and I get anxious, I'm afraid I'm going to see the wrong thing, where I become paralyzed to make a decision. So mm-hmm. I do have these cards that are they're Native American kind of, maybe they're not Native American. They're more like spirit animal cards. And so I like to pull one out and like, kind of think on a subject, like what can I learn today? What should I be thinking about today? Pull out, the owl card and then read the symbolism behind the owl. So then it's not like, it's more open-ended.
Yeah. I prefer to have open-ended readings too, because if it's too specific, it's like, first of all, if now that I know that that's a possibility, there's either I could self-fulfill, or if it was real, I just got shown a path that now I might not walk down because now I see it, So it's kind of a conundrum. That's why like I just do it sparingly, just because if it's too specific, then you're screwing yourself over. You got to have, like you're saying, that general aspect to it to at least get you in the right alignment.
Yeah, exactly.
And so do you have any kind of spiritual practice or anything that is benefiting your life?
I pray a lot. Sometimes I pray in my sleep, mostly for my family, my son, my husband, my friends, I pray a lot, but, and I try to thank God a lot and be appreciative of where I'm at right now. Because everything changes and it can change in an instant. But, as far as like spiritual practices, I don't besides that. Every once in a while, I will get into the practice of meditation. And I got a back injury in 2020. I was really into meditation. It was great. 2020, I got a really bad back injury that kept me from sitting. And so I had to stand all the time, stand or lay down. And it's still not totally better, So, 3 years later, I'm considering trying it again. So, there's walking meditations. You can walk slowly and think on something. I've gone to some Buddhist meditations downtown where you sit for 25 minutes, you get up, you walk in a circle real slow. Then you sit down for another 25 minutes. And I guess sometimes running, walking is kind of a meditation, but I don't know if it's a spiritual practice for me. I get a lot of painting ideas when I'm walking and running.
I feel that as well. I remember Henry Thoreau, he talked about that in, I can't remember which book it was. Darn. But he was talking about how he's like, people should walk more because your best ideas come from when you're just out letting just kind of the world pass by as you're just walking through and letting yourself just think freely.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that a lot when I walk, I come up with ideas that I can actually implement. But when I'm sitting down and trying to think through something, I tend to outthink myself into doing nothing.
Yeah. Walking, hiking in the woods. I do a lot of hiking in the woods. Being out in nature. There's something about that that's healing,
It's so true.
It is. And I think when we're moving, sometimes with meditation too, because you're not moving during meditation. It's like my ideas, it's almost like water. The ideas in my head are like water, and the more I move, the more the ideas and the thoughts flow through me more.
I feel that.
I think it's really important to get your blood flowing, and your brain needs oxygen.
For real. And one of my questions is, because like I know a lot of artists work from photographs, and then some of them just work purely from their mind.
Yeah.
Which do you prefer to work with?
Well, I like to get an idea in my head first, and then I will go online and just get photos of like the position of an animal or the look of a tree, so I can get the colors, get the shape down. So I do a little bit of both. My skies are pretty much all mine. I'll look for like color combos in skies, and I do a lot of blues. But Yeah, I like to come up with my own thing first, and then just use photographs as color and values, and shapes, you know.
Mm. So when you're coming up with your painting, do you see it in like your mind's eye, or is it more of a nebulous concept?
Uh, it's a little bit of both. There's a concept. I might want to tell a story. I might see it. So there is an example of this painting that I sold back in December, and it was an old woman laying on her side in a field of flowers with some rolling hills behind her, and her
Hmm.
spirit was leaving her body in the form of a bird. And I had that concept, but in my mind's eye, the sky was totally different. Um, and the hills were different. I had a thumbnail sketch of what I wanted to do, but as I was painting, I'm like, well, that's not working. What I wanted isn't coming out on the canvas. I think that's a learning curve too, getting what you have in your head out onto the canvas or the paper. That can be a big challenge. It's like your eyes being too big for your stomach. So you have to work within your own parameters to make your concept work. And I admit that I've had to, I don't want to say dumb it down, but what I had in my mind I wasn't capable of that at the moment. So I had to kind
Hmm.
of do what I could within my own parameters to make that work.
I totally feel that. There's lots of paintings like I just kind of have to make do with what I got, but the vision in my
Yeah,
head is so detailed and it's
yeah,
just overly complicated. Like if I was working in a 3D modeling thing, maybe I could make that, but not with what I have and know right now.
yeah.
So, is there anything that you find hones the skill to be able to take what you see in your head and then replicate it into the real world and make it like how you want?
Well, I think it's a combination of observing the work of other people, observing the work around you, where I know that plein air painting can be really beneficial. I'm kind of hesitant to go try that. It's just, you've got to observe. You have to think about your values. I know that I took a really great class in values that really changed the way I painted. And then just actually doing it. You got to do it. And I know you got to make a bunch of crap. And a lot of artists don't want to do that. They don't want to, if you don't have a lot of money, you don't want to waste your materials.
Hmm.
It feels like a waste sometimes. I end up
Yeah.
I'll sand down and repaint a painting. I don't feel like once it's done that it has to go out there, or that that's just the way it is. No, I'll sand it down and repaint it.
Yeah, I've got
Yeah.
several of those.
You have to, because it's like anything, if you're going to start playing the saxophone, like my son started from, square one playing hot cross buns, and you make a lot of mistakes, and you just replay and you replay and you replay, and pretty soon he's playing, for state in high school.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I have a ton, and here in my studio, I have a ton of work that I will never show anybody. Or I've shown and I'm like, oh gosh, did you really put that out there? Oh my gosh.
But have you ever noticed, like, even if you're not satisfied with a painting, some people it really speaks to?
Yep. I've had people buy things that I wasn't happy with at all, and I'm like, what's wrong with that person?
Yeah.
But I guess
Oh
they saw
God, for
something
real.
I didn't.
I feel that a lot. So I want to switch gears again because I love doing this because my brain goes in 50 different directions all at the same time, and I have to pick one that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And so I like talking to people a lot about the nature of the universe and how they think of God and how they see it.
Mm-hmm.
My own idea can be slightly heretical, but I love understanding other people's
Yeah.
perspectives. So what do you see?
Um, how I define God, or how I see God.
Yeah,
Wow. Well, I don't think of God as a man in the sky with a beard. I think of God more
agreed.
like this huge presence, this huge, overwhelming, um, loving, all-encompassing presence. And, you know, for example, when I was probably 20 years old or 19 years old, I was in this really awful abusive relationship, and I needed to know when to get out of there. And I remember just sitting alone because this guy ended up getting a night shift job. And I was sitting there and I felt like at the time I was wearing this kind of this Mother Mary pendant that I would hold a lot during that time. So I'm like, oh God, get me out of here, get me out of here. I need to know when to do it. Because I was down in Reno all by myself. And all of a sudden I'm sitting there and all of a sudden I felt the room fill with this huge loving presence. It almost like felt like it was squeezing me, but overwhelming, huge presence. And it was, get out, it's time, you know. That's the time where I feel like that's how I define God, is just not this physical being, not this man in a chair, but loving, all-knowing presence, and that we can connect with that presence all the time, you know, because it fills us too.
Yes, agreed. And so I've noticed in your art, it seems to be, I don't know, like trying to find the words on to how to express what it feels like to me. Like almost like primordial creation, like especially the one in the back with the swirling fish clouds.
Yet. Just so you know, it's not done yet. I don't want anybody to think that's done.
Oh my God.
That's just what I'm working on right now.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I wish
it was supposed to be another fly fisherman, but it doesn't call for that. I knew that it might turn into a bear, which might do that. So I don't know yet.
So do you have a, when you're painting, do you try to channel that creative force, like as you're saying, like that all-knowing, all-loving presence? Is that something you're trying to create, like your own like little world?
Yeah, pretty much trying to create my own little world, like something that is, you know, not so normal. You know, I think there are aspects of normal that are very beautiful in paintings, but I'm just trying to add something a little bit more, more otherworldly to it, you know.
I love that. So is there any particular animal that you feel particularly drawn to when you want to paint something?
It changes. It changes. I've done a lot of koi in the last year. I'm kind of feeling drawn toward the bear right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any particular reason?
I don't know. I really don't know why. I need to figure that out because I've been really interested over the years in animal symbology, you know, spirit animals. And I think sometimes we feel drawn toward a certain animal because that is kind of symbolizing where we're at in life, you know. Bears,
I love
think
that,
about bears in hibernation. It's almost spring. We're coming out of hibernation. Maybe that's why I've done a lot of them. We've all been kind of cooped up with the snow, and people are kind of coming out.
It kind of reminds me of. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no,
I didn't mean to talk over you.
That's okay. I just feel a little bit like that. You know, coming out, wanting to explore, wanting to, you know, shake the dirt off and have some fun.
I love that. It kind of reminds me a bit of like you were talking about earlier, that cyclical aspect that you put in a lot of your art, of the death and rebirth kind of aspect, because like every year it's like a form of death. You know, he's going into the cave for a while, into a grave, and then coming back out a new animal.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yeah, I've been eating a lot of honey.
I love honey.
Yeah.
I put it on everything. Sometimes I'll just make if I just want a midnight snack and I'm really lazy, I just put in some toast, then put some honey on it, and I was just sitting there in the kitchen at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Get some low blood sugar.
I know, right? And so before I start wrapping everything up, where can people find your art?
Well, you can go to Katrina Brennan Art on Facebook. And then Art Speaks 90 on Instagram. And then I do have a website that I need to, I'm building a different website right now. It's taken me a while because it's difficult. But right now you can at least view my portfolio at artbykbrennan.com. Yeah, hopefully I'm building that. Shopify, I know I talked to Amanda on the phone, and yeah.
I love Shopify.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good once I figure it out. But yeah, Art by K. Brennan right now to view a portfolio, just my work. So
perfect.
I think that's it. Yeah.
So if someone is interested in buying one of your pieces, should they email you or DM you on one of your social media?
They can do any of those. So they can DM me on Instagram or Facebook. They can also email me at wait a second. No. Artist Katrina Brennan at gmail.com.
Okay. Awesome. I always try to make sure I give an artist a little bit of time to kind of, put their stuff out there, because it's our lifeblood,
Yes.
We're trying to create stuff and sell.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I'm trying to ramp that up.
Yeah.
I'm trying to take it to the next level and be more serious about it. So, I'm getting prints out there and just trying to do what I can. Instagram Reels, just started doing those. So
one little piece of advice, I'd say look into YouTube Shorts.
Okay.
They get a lot more reach right now than Instagram or Facebook, at least from what I'm seeing.
Okay. Yeah. I'm willing to try that.
Awesome. Well, Katrina, it was awesome having you on the podcast, filled with awesome subjects, especially a lot of my favorite ones to talk about. And so we're going to have you come on on the show again at some point.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So thank you for being on, and I will talk to you later.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.